Hey guys! Your girl has been getting back into reading, and I have a reading goal of 45 books this year. So I thought I would update you guys on like the books I've read so far. And by the books I read so far, I mean like every book I've read this year. That being said, I have a perfectionism sort of thing going on with when I read. If I read a book, I have to finish it. And it pains me so much to DNF certain books, but there is one DNF in here and I will explain why later. There will be some spoilers, but not like super bad. But it'll be like a precursor, like summary of the book and then what I rated it. This is how I rate books. 5 out of 5, I will worship that book. I will literally spread its praise everywhere. 4 is like, I really enjoyed it. I would read it again and I would recommend it to a friend. 3 is like, it's meh. It's okay. 2 is questionable, but it's not horrible, but it's questionable. I'm starting to wonder why this person got into writing. And then 1 is just, it's abysmal. Why does it exist? Get rid of it. Burn it. Get it away from me. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, obviously. I mean, if you like me doing book content, let me know because I do love reading and I would love to do another book video like this again. So I have my computer here. So if I look over, that's what I'm looking at. So for January, I started off with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This was a horror book. It was about a book club of Southern moms in like the 70s, I think. It was about a book club who was convinced one of their neighbors was a vampire and them trying to save their families in the complex family dynamics that go on in it. I've never been more angry at both men and children in my entire life. Her kids were aggravating her husband, was such a gaslighter. I managed to finish the book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I do love me a good horror, historical horror moment, and I think it was a really like the main character was a very strong woman. She did do some questionable things, but like at the same time, like there was a vampire. So like, I don't really blame her. Like I would be questionable too. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. That was the second book. I actually really like this book and I watched the show and I have to say, I love it. Camilla Supremacy. This was pretty much a book about a band that got together in like the 70s or 80s and just them going on tours, gaining popularity. It was written in more like a documentary style, so it would go between interviews and then flashbacks of like their time. I give this a 3 out of 5 because I do love it, but I wanted more justice for my girl Camilla because she deserves so much more. The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas. This was a mystery novel about a girl going through and trying to figure out a murder that happened a year or two prior. I'm not really sure the timeline of this, but she pretty much takes it upon herself to figure out what happened and why it happened. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It's a good mystery. It wasn't groundbreaking or anything, but I do think it is worth the read. Next, I read the Inheritance Game series. I do have to say, probably one of my new favorite series of all time. Those books are kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine of a book. It's like every event has a small but also large impact on the rest of the story, and everything is important and everything is a clue and you have to put it together yourself. Pretty much the premise is Avery, a middle-class girl, no parents, living with her sister, ends up being called in and saying that it is told that pretty much a lot of her inheritance has been laid out for her. She has inherited a lot of money and assets, literally everything, from a man named Tobias Hawthorne, who she has never met and is very rich, and she's very confused, obviously. So she ends up going to the house where she has to deal with his pesky grandsons and how they're all mad at her for taking the money. But I do have to say, it did give me some of the best romance vibes that I have read so far between Greason, Jameson, and her. I don't like love triangles, but I will bear this one because they're both really hot. Okay, so I do recommend this series. I gave them all a 5 out of 5, except for the last one. I got that a 4.5 out of 5. So moving on to February was a very, very slow month for me. So first off, I read Souls by Brent Asher. Pretty much the vibe is it's a bodyguard ex-princess story. He is presumed dead, like legally dead, pretty much. And he decides he's going to bodyguard this princess from a foreign country. She's a Moroccan princess. Is fighting a lot of attraction towards her. There's a huge age gap. I think it's like 10 years. In my opinion, that's huge, but for some people, that's like doable. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because the plot itself is good. I just was very uncomfortable the smut at this point. I was still very new to reading dirty or like steamy romance. So like I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I like the romance aspect of it. I do love a good bodyguard ex-princess vibe. You will see later on I do read another one and I was in love with it. But I was just very new to reading smut and I was very confused. The other book I read was The Sweetest Oblivion by Daniel Laurie. This was such a book talk book. It was so talked about. Everyone was obsessing over Nico Russo and I wanted to see what was going on. Suffice it to say, I half see it, half don't. Like, his character's a little bit questionable. I get why people like it. It has like the spiciness that is needed, but it also, there's a lot of tension. Pretty much the premise is they're in a mob. This is a mafia family. They're two, I think, rival families, the Russos, and I forgot the girl's name. He is engaged to marry her sister, but this entire time, he's been eyeing the main character. So he decides he's going to do anything possible to make sure he marries her. I will say, I understand why people like it. I understand. Does that mean that I really, really enjoyed it? No, because I think his character was way too questionable for me to like fully indulge in it. I did give it a 3 out of 5 because Daniel Laurie, good writer. I like how she writes. I like the way she develops tension. So from a technical aspect, I do really like it. But I just don't like Nico that much. Like, I don't think he's my favorite out of like the romance boyfriends. So I gave it just a 3 out of 5, which is pretty much standard. Most of the books you'll see, I either give it 3 or a 4. Into March, again, pretty slow month. I was going through it at this point. I was in organic chemistry. So if you've taken organic chemistry, you know I was struggling. The Maddest Obsession by Daniel Laurie. This had to do with Nico's best friend, Christian, and Nico's ex-stepmother. To be honest, I liked this one a lot better, and this is probably my favorite of the series. This was the only book in the series that balanced spice with sweet. I need to have some basis of emotional connection, which is what I was missing in the first and third book of the series, because first and third book, they were really just trying to go at it. There was just such a good balance of romance. Like, it wasn't just lust, it was love, and I love that. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was just such a cute story, despite the circumstances, because the circumstances were really weird. But this was them finally getting together after 10 years of back and forth, because it's a really, really big slow burn. The Darkest Temptation. This was the last book of this series. It's again by Daniel Laurie. I hated it. Ronan is an awful person. And I don't mean that in like oh, he's damaged, so he's done questionable things. He's just awful. I don't care that he treated her well later in the book. That does not excuse his actions in the beginning. This is a spoiler, but if you aren't going to read this book, I'm just going to let you know why I don't like this character. First off, the premise is Mila, our main character, she wants to go to Russia to explore her heritage because she doesn't know who her mother is. And her father refuses to let her go because it's dangerous. So this girl ends up booking a flight and sneaking out to Russia. She quickly realizes, I don't know that much Russian and I don't have a place to stay. And I clearly look like a foreigner, so people are going to try and take advantage of me. What did I just do? And Ronan is a man she meets on the street. He ends up being like her tour guide and like setting her up with a place to stay, giving her food. She's falling head over heels in love, being like, wow, this really hot guy is taking care of me. And the whole time, this man knows who this girl is and is using her to take revenge on her father. So that's strike one for me. Like, you already knew, and now you're using this poor girl who is clearly in a vulnerable situation. Strike two, he takes her virginity and records it and then sends it to her dad. That's already really, really awful. But he then taunts her about it because at some point he does kidnap her. This is also a very big Stockholm Syndrome book. And that's another reason why I don't like it, because like, he's just awful. Like, I don't like him, and I don't care that he was nice to her. And later on, after he kidnapped her, it's just, why did you kidnap her in the first place? Like, I just don't get it. Like, there's other ways to get at the dad. Like, you didn't have to involve the daughter who clearly knew nothing. Honestly, 1.5 out of 5, if I'm gonna be very honest. It was just not good. Like, out of the 3 books, it was probably the worst one because Ronan. And the third book I read in March was From Lukov with Love. I needed a really cute, soft romance after everything I just read. I had just read 3 really dark romances and I was dying. Brain cells were exiting my body. This one was enemies to lovers. It was enemy figure skaters who could not stand each other. They just thought the other person was so annoying. And they end up getting paired together for a figure skating competition. And it's a lot of pining. It's a lot of banter. And I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It is also a he falls first situation, which I always love. I love it when a guy falls first because that's how I want my life to be. I will not confess first because I need to know the other person likes me. I cannot be caught out here being like, I like you. And then the other person's like, nah, I don't really feel that way. Now I feel embarrassed. I need for absolute certainty for the other person to say that they like me before I say anything. And I do want a romance like this, although I would probably cry if I had enemies to lovers because I just hate the thought of anyone hating me. It did take me forever to read, and it's also a really big slow burn. So if you are okay with literally just bits and pieces of like them being together, this is the book for you because it's such an excruciating slow burn. They only get together within like the last few chapters, but other than that, really good. April, again, super slow month. So I read Under Lock by Mariana Zapata. I actually also really like this book. It is age gap romance, but I will excuse this one because it's actually really cute. I gave it 4 out of 5. A tattoo artist falls for his receptionist. It is extremely grumpy sunshine. He falls for her after her brother secures her a job at the tattoo parlor he runs. And after a lot of her reprimanding him for being a grumpy person, he ends up falling in love with her. It was just such a good story. I really like it. 4 out of 5. Cute ass romance, in my opinion. The next book I read was a recommendation from a friend, and it was I Too Had a Love Story by Ravinder Singh. And I just have to say, this was probably one of the higher rated books in what I've read so far. It's still a 4.5, but like in my heart, it's higher. You know, like in my heart is just above every other 4.5. So I guess it's a 4.5 out of 5. It's Desi Love, which I'm actually really happy about because I haven't read any like Desi Love since like the Bangalore Detectives Club. And that was literally like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I think. Online dating and how it goes right sometimes. And just this beautiful romance story between this boy and this girl who meet online and are just ready to spend the rest of their lives together, and just their ups and downs in their relationship. It's very real and it's very beautiful, and I recommend everyone read it because it's just such a wholesome look at everything. I have never read love in such like a real way, and the way he writes it is just so beautiful. Thank you to the friend who recommended it to me. She knows who she is. The last book I read in April was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a small town romance, grumpy sunshine again. Pretty much this woman, forgot her name again, I'm going to call her Addie because a lot of these books have a girl named Addie or Allie or Abby, something like that. She runs away from her wedding and ends up getting forced to take care of her niece because her sister runs away with her car and all of her stuff. So she's stuck in the middle of nowhere, and she ends up being helped out by a grumpy neighbor. Knox ends up taking care of her, and they end up becoming a little family. It's a little romance between them. I gave it a 2 out of 5 though, because the main guy lead just was not giving. Like, Knox was just not giving. Every decision he made, I was just slapping myself in the head, like, just like, why did you do that? Like, she's so good for you. Like, why are you pushing her away? I hate tropes like that where the guy is just determined to not be in love. And I'm like, I get it. But like after a little bit, you just have to accept it, you know? Like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen and you don't have a choice. In May, which we're now transitioning to, that was my segue. In May, I read the second book of that series, Things We Hide from the Light, which is about Knox's brother, Nash, who is a police officer. This is a romance between Nash and Lena, who actually was Knox's like friend with benefits when they were in college. Enemies to lovers kind of vibe, because she's a vigilante. Like, she fights crime by herself because she wants to. So she will go and find stolen like art pieces or sculptures, and she will turn them back into their rightful place. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I like it a lot more than the first one. If you like small town romance, I think the series is good because it does it very well. But I do think Nash so far is my favorite. I then read The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. This is a mystery novel about a group of elderly people who solve cold cases, and it's set in a cute little British town. It's just a really cute book. Like, knowing that it's a mystery novel, yes, people are dying. It's about it's like a group of old people that come together on the weekends, like, let's solve a cold case, let's have some tea and biscuits, gather around the table, let's talk about it. And it was such a fun read. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I made the mistake of reading this. This is like the 3rd or 4th book in a series, and I read it out of context, so I was just like, what is happening? I do want to read the series at some point. I haven't yet, but I liked what I did read. It's just elderly people around, like, they're just talking about murder, like, casually. They're just like, oh, I want to, like, let's interview some people. These grandmas and grandpas. I then read Devil's Chew Toy by Rob Osler. This one was a lot lower rated for me. It was 2 out of 5. It was also mystery. It was pretty much an 8th grade teacher trying to solve the case of his missing crush. One of his, like, he pretty much meets this guy, like, one night, and then they sleep together, and then he goes missing, and you would think, like, oh, it's a one-night stand. Obviously, he's gonna leave. He goes missing. Like, he's not seen again. And he solves this crime with 2 lesbians. That's really important. It was just a big LGBTQ book. And I actually, for that reason, I would say, if you want to read a cute, funsy, like, LGBTQ plus rep book about mystery and, like, murder, I would recommend it. But in the case of, like, was my interest piqued the entire time? Not really. And I also kind of guessed who did it. So I give it 2 out of 5. But I would say check it out for yourself and see if you like it. And then the last book I read in May was The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud. This was the first book of the Lockwood & Co. series. And I made a commitment to read all of Lockwood & Co. If you have never read Lockwood & Co., you've never heard of it, it's pretty much about a trio of teens, Lucy, Lockwood, and George. This is at least the first book. This is a world where only kids can see ghosts. And this is a place where it's set in London, like in Britain, and the whole world has been overrun with ghosts. And people are dying from it, and they pretty much have these kids set up as agents that go and stop these ghosts because they're the only ones that can see and hear them. This book was the first one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I love a good found family trope. I love a good supernatural mystery, and that's what this was. It did it well. Moving on to June, I proceeded to read The Whispering Skull. This was the second book of the Lockwood & Co. series, and it was, again, found family. The thing I wrote here for the summary was, found family becomes reluctant friends with the skull and fights a Doofenshmirtz wannabe. That's all I'm telling you about the plot. I then proceeded to read probably one of my favorite books ever now. I was so enlightened when I read it, and that is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I love romance. I am such a romantic. I love cutesy, fluffy romance with like a lot of pining, and that's what this was. It's just such a cute book, and my main girl Liz is so delusional, but I love her so much. I gave this book a 5 out of 5. Wes Bennett, probably one of my favorite book boyfriends. He's just so cute and like so attentive. It's like an experience you have to read, but I loved it so much. I recommended it to all my friends, and one of them is reading it right now. And I think more books need to be written like this, where it's like just delusional girls. I feel like we need to be represented because Delulu is Delulu, and I need people to know that. Like, you need to, like, I feel like girls, a lot of time when you're reading romance, they get kind of shamed for reading it because it's like, oh my god, that's so silly, that's so goofy. Yes, it's silly and goofy. Let me be silly and goofy. The world is bad enough as it is. I want to read a freaking cutesy romance novel because I want to manifest that for myself. Why is that a bad thing? Romance is not girly. Romance is for everyone. I will assert that till the day I die. What do you mean it's girly? Then guys just don't fall in love. Don't say it's girly and then do it yourself. You think it's girly? Then don't be in a relationship because that's romance, babes. Like, that's girly. So if you can't handle the heat, get out the kitchen. Let's move on to July, my birth month. I was staying alone in Dallas over the summer, so I had a lot more free time to myself. This was also the month that I decided I'm going to read almost every Anna Huang book that's out there, and I'm still in the process of doing it, so I'll let you know when I get to the end. That being said, the first 2 books I read in July were both Anna Huang books from the Twisted series, Twisted Love and Twisted Games. I have thoughts about Twisted Love, and I'm going to share them right now. I'm going to say, worst book in the Twisted series. I want all the Alex Volkov stans to speak up right now. He is one of my least favorite book boyfriends that I've read right so far. I just didn't like him. I thought there was no balance in his character between being cold and being loving. Let me first summarize it. It's pretty much a brother's best friend romance where the brother ends up going away and he sets up Alex to look after his sister Ava. And Ava and him have just never really gotten along because, you know, she thinks that he thinks she's childish and like just very naive. And he does think that, but like in also a way, he doesn't like being around her because in his mind, he can't control himself. It's also very grumpy sunshine, which is another thing that I love. But I think there was just no the balance in his character. There's always a balance between them being cold and them being a good boyfriend. You know, like it's just, there's a balance. There wasn't as much balance in this book, and also I think it heavily relied on a lot of smut. There wasn't as many like cutesy moments between them. It was a lot of them just like getting it on. And as much as I know that people like that, it just wasn't for me as much as the other books were. For that reason, I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I was kind of indifferent to it. Ava is probably one of my favorite female leads. Like, she's just so bright, cheerful, very headstrong, very ambitious character, and I love that. I also then read Twisted Games, which is the second book. It has to do with Rhys and Bridget. Bridget is the princess of Eldora, which is a small European country, and Rhys is pretty much assigned to be her bodyguard after the old one goes on paternity leave. And they don't get along. He's very, very into the rules, and she's very, very not into it. So she's just like, I want to go do things because I'm in college. And he's just like, no, you're a princess. Like, act like it. She gets sent home because she struggles with becoming queen, and it's pretty much them trying to navigate a relationship while she's also queen and also dealing with a tradition or rule sort of situation where pretty much the ruler of Eldora cannot be married to a commoner. But there's also a lot more softness and fluff in this book. So I did like it a lot more than Twisted Love, which is why I gave it a 4 out of 5. He was just a very sweet partner, and also he's the only Twisted boyfriend, like from the Twisted series, that didn't mess up even once. So everyone had like a grand mess up that they had to grovel. He never had to grovel because he never did anything wrong. I do have to say though, Twisted Love had a really good groveling scene. I feel like people need to read it for the groveling because the groveling was masterful. Anna, if you're out there, the groveling and Twisted Love, I love you. I ate that up, okay? Thank you for making our girl be a strong character and not letting this man back in after like 2 seconds. The book I read after that was The Hollow Boy by Jonathan Stroud, the third book in the Lockwood & Co. series. This is pretty much the book where I was a little bit out of it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because for some reason Lucy wasn't a girl's girl. That was my main problem with it. She had a problem with, so we introduced a new character named Holly, who's pretty much there as a secretary. She manages all of like the cases that they get and filters appointments, making their life easier, literally cleaning up after them. And Lucy found a problem in everything she did. I kind of lost interest in the series by then because I'm like, why aren't the characters acting so different compared to like the other 2 books? Because I know for a fact Lucy, the way she acts is someone who would empower other women, and she wasn't really doing that in this book. So I was just like, what is going on? Like, where did my girl go? I don't know. It's just, I was very confused. Because I was like, why aren't you a girl's girl? You're supposed to be a girl's girl. Like, in my brain, I programmed you to be a girl's girl, and the book is not reflecting that. After this, I read Stone Fruit I buddy read this with a friend. It's a graphic novel by Lee Lai. It's pretty much about a queer couple that breaks up and the individual journeys they go through after their breakup. I gave this a 3 out of 5 because I feel like they were trying to make me think one of them was the problem when they clearly weren't, and the other one was clearly the problem. And I was very happy with the ending with that knowledge in my brain. But it was extremely aggravating to read some of the characters and like their thought process because it is a graphic novel, so it's very visual and you can see what everyone is thinking. I then read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This again was buddy read with a different friend. This book was pretty much about a girl named Pip who decides to do her school project on a murder case that had happened in her town. She ends up teaming up with his younger brother to help solve the case. Probably one of the best romances I've ever read in my entire life. I love them so much. I'm currently reading the second book, Good Girl, Bad Blood, and I just love their moments so much. They're just so cute. They're there. Like, I have to hold on to them because there's not many of like the romance in this book. It's mainly just her figuring things out, but it's such a good premise and it's such a good format. I do recommend. I gave it a 4 out of 5. And then after this, I read The Creeping Shadow by Jonathan Stroud. This was the 4th book and probably the last book that I've read for Lockwood & Co. for a while. I'm still trying to find the 5th book. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 again because it was just not the same energy as the first 2, and I was waiting for the same energy as the first 2. It was just a lot of angst, and I was very stressed the entire time. And she's still low-key not a girl's girl, and I'm like, girl, what is going on? I don't understand. I feel like Jonathan, you kind of ruined her. That brings us to August. August, I started off with The Atlas Six by Ollie V. Blake, and I really thought I was gonna like it because I do love dark academia, but I didn't finish it. I can't give you a rating because I DNF'd it. And it hurt me so bad to DNF it. It was just, I feel like it's a book for smart people. I don't really know. It's about 6 magical teenagers who get chosen for a program where they compete to get a coveted spot in like the Library of Alexandria. I feel like it's a book for smart people because I was reading it and I would have reread the chapters like 3 times at least because I wasn't comprehending anything, and I really wanted to like it, but I was just not getting into the groove. I might read it again at some point and see if I can get into it. Like I was waiting for something to happen and just was not working. I then read Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is the 3rd book in the Twisted series. I gave this a 3 out of 5. It's a best friend's brother and enemies to lovers romance, and also low-key friends with benefits. Josh, I will fight you if I see you though. She may have forgiven you, but I hold grudges. Next, I read Twisted Lies. This is again by Anna Huang. This was by far my favorite. 4 out of 5. It is a fake dating romance. A CEO, and it falls for his neighbor / tenant because he owns the building, and they pretty much create a fake dating thing so she can boost her social media because she's an influencer and wants to create a fashion brand, and for him to not get asked questions about getting married. So they end up striking up a deal. They become like fake boyfriend girlfriend, but they end up falling in love, and it's just very cute. It's also my favorite. Like I love Christian Harper. Like he's my bae. Like oh my god, if there's a Christian Harper out there, call me. I then read Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I root for my girl Emily. I follow her on TikTok. She's currently battling cancer. That woman is a warrior, and also she writes good. Like that girl, her books, I love the literature. This one though, Hooked, premise a little weird. So Hooked is a modern romantic retelling of Peter Pan. Now, I want you first off to guess who the pairing is. It's Hook and Wendy. The premise is pretty much James Hook was wronged by Peter Pan, or Peter Michaels in this case, and he decides to get revenge by dating his daughter and getting business secrets from her. This girl who obviously knows nothing about her dad, he decides like, oh yeah, I'm gonna date her. So I give this a 3 out of 5 because writing really good, but also like, what was this? Like, babes, I don't like this trope at all. I don't like it when a guy, this is also a reason why I didn't like The Darkest Temptation, because like, why are you out here using people? Why can't you say that you have so much power? Why can't you just go up against him? You're a gang leader. For some reason, you need this 20 woman in her early 20s to go fight her dad. I do have to say though, the ending, they are very wholesome, but also like I read the beginning. I read the beginning of their romance, which is why I don't like them. I then read 5 Survive by Holly Jack. I gave it a 4 out of 5. The book is about a group of friends and they're trying to go on a road trip, but they end up getting stranded because their tires get shot out by a sniper. And the sniper ends up getting control of the radio, and they're like, hey, all of you can leave if the one person who has the secret that I need, if you confess to your secret and you die. So then the entire book is just them trying to throw each other under the metaphorical bus. I love a locked room situation where it happens in one place and they're all freaking out and they're all just like throwing each other under the, it's like I love watching people devolve. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I love a book where you're just watching people devolve into madness and they're just not people anymore. They're beasts. Holly Jackson just does mystery really well. I would recommend her books if you want a mystery kick. And the last book I read in August was King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This took me forever to read because I had no time to read it. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It is arranged marriage trope that stems from blackmail. He pretty much gets blackmailed by her father to marry her. I love Dante and Vivian, but I love Vivian more. Vivian, you're my girl. The reason I like this pairing so much is because of Vivian. Vivian, like, is such a hard-headed, headstrong woman that it makes sense for her to be in a book like this and like be paired with a man like this. Like, she's the only person that would be able to put up with this. I did like it a lot. 3 out of 5 for me. And I only finished one book in September, and that is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And I actually am on the way to read the rest of the series. It's pretty much about the FBI enlisting teenagers who are good at like reading people, or like good, like very gifted teenagers, and enlisting them to solve cold cases. And I gave it 4 out of 5 because it was a groundbreaking. No, but would I read it again and again and again? Yes, because I ate that up. Jennifer Lynn Barnes is the same author who did Inheritance Games, and that's probably why I liked it so much, is because her writing is a Rube Goldberg machine. And that's every book I've read this year so far. I'm currently reading Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, the second book of the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and King of Pride, which is the next book in the Kings of Sin series by Anna Huang. If you want to keep up to date with my books, I'm going to link my Goodreads down below and also my Insta, because my Insta, I do post every book that I read, or at least the books that I feel like I can post. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this was a very weird video to make. It was just me ranting about books, and maybe you are really bored, but I wasn't. That's what matters. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And also, if you want to comment any book recs you have for me, I will definitely take them into consideration and maybe read them and maybe post about them. Toodles. I'm changing my outro now because I don't want to do stay safe, stay sane, stay sanitary. So, bye-bye.
Like and subscribe.